A new climate-focused media outlet is getting panned by journalists for literally being paid for by one of the largest polluters in the world. So now this newsletter is called Semafor, which claims they aim to distinguish themselves from legacy media outlets with their own unique article structures, which launched last week as a free advertising-supported media site, but would then evolve into a paywalled subscription model in about 12 to 18 months after gaining brand recognition, according to an article with CNBC. Journalist Bill Spindle wrote for Monday's newsletter, Semafor Climate will be taking the temperature of the politics, technology, and energy markets influencing global warming. Does that sound interesting? Well, here we are. So I love how it says, and this is the headline, right? So today I delve into Europe's efforts to get off Russian gas and the U.S. campaign to assure the EU's ban on Russian oil doesn't send crude prices soaring. And feeling anxious about climate change? Study shows that you're not alone. But an electric Rolls-Royce could make you feel better. You can afford it. Who is this geared towards? I don't see average people reading that and going, oh, yeah, no, definitely. If we could afford that Rolls-Royce, totally get it. Most people can't afford a normal electric car or even a normal car. Are you kidding me? Who is this aimed towards? But it's worse, by the way. It's worse than bad writing because guess what? It turns out one of the sponsors is, well, Chevron. Message from our sponsor. We believe the fuels of the future can come from some very unexpected places at Chevron. We're working with partners in California to convert the methane from cow waste into renewable natural gas. Find out more. So that's ridiculous. Okay. Now, science journalist Joe Brown noted that this ag capture project in the ad is as bad as greenwashing gets, saying it's a natural gas plant. So look, greenwashing, you may have heard it before. Let me give you a quick definition. It's basically the practice of making brands, corporate brands, appear more sustainable than they really are. Now, one of the ways that they try to do that is carbon offsets or carbon credits, which doesn't actually offset anything. Now, another example of greenwashing is calling things natural, clean, biodegradable, renewable, when they're actually not any of those things. Especially natural gas. Natural gas, not a renewable. Okay? But this is the thing. We care about the environment. We care about cutting emissions. Well, no, as Common Dreams notes, while Chevron says they claim to support the Paris Agreement, for example, which is the bare minimum, I would say, and last year adopted a 2050 net zero aspiration for equity upstream scope 1 and 2 emissions, the company faces criticism for not cutting any pollution. So, you know. And look, there's a reason. It's because that's their business model. If they cut pollution, they would be cutting their own profit margins. Their business model is pollution. That's why they're doing this, by the way. Look, Chevron knows that they have a PR problem. And they have a PR problem because it turns out people are starting to care about the environment. Is it everybody's top priority? No. And you can look at polls, but that doesn't mean people don't care. By the way, it should be a much, much higher priority than it really is. People are starting to care about the environment because of the effects of climate change. And so the new way of doing PR, apparently, is to try to distance themselves from legacy media and instead sponsor what is now independent media, which isn't independent at all. In fact, previewing Semafor in June, New York Times reported that the co-founders, the newspaper's former media columnist Ben Smith and ex-Bloomberg Media CEO Justin Smith, no relation, said that it would tackle the lack of trust in media and compete for English language readers against outlets like CNN, The Times, and The Washington Post. Oh, the lack of trust. This is so ironic. Oh, incredibly ironic. Yet we are going to tackle the lack of trust in media by being sponsored by the biggest polluter one of the biggest polluter in the world. Okay, yeah, great. Oh, you're really, really good at engendering trust. Amazing. And again, doing so by pretending to be independent when you've got that giant corporate sponsorship. Well done. Well done. That earns
bullshit.
That earns a bullshit. Do you really believe that a climate newspaper or newsletter, sponsored by a major polluter is going to be honest about the sponsor? No. And yet here they are claiming to not be biased against their sponsor. It's ridiculous. Now, progressives like David Sirota of The Lever pointed this out. Here's what he wrote. What stage of media is it when climate newsletter brought to you by the industry destroying the climate is the ascendant business model? Well, I mean, to be fair, they're going to be going paywall in 12 to 18 months. So that means, of course, nobody's going to read it. Well, good. Maybe you should up that timetable because maybe nobody should be reading your garbage. Andrew Perez, another great, writer at The Lever, said this, quote, "It's great that more companies are adopting the Politico playbook Axios punchbowl model where they let horrible companies actively lie to their readers for money." And look, there's an example of this, right? and there's an article in The Lever back from October of 2021, but it's excellent. And I want to share some of that with you about this entire situation. They write, "This new foundation of political news was originally constructed by the now disgraced Washington gossip Mark Halperin and his ABC News email called The Note, a publication founded in January 2002 as an internal staff memo proudly boasting that it only cared about the so-called Gang of 500 people in Washington who allegedly matter." Great. Wonderful. Today's copycats like Politico, Punchbowl, and Axios have made this arrangement even more explicit. Their innovation was baking corporate ideology directly into their news via snarky voice and so-called native advertising. In practice, their primary raison d'etre is not to publish accountability reporting, but instead to play tone policeman and frame the parameters of the policy discourse so that it best guarantees outcomes that corporate sponsors want. They also added that in the rip and read world of news and politics, these newsletters are the talking points torn out by pundits, TV bookers, lobbyists, and then turned into newspaper columns, two-camera diatribes, and pitches to lawmakers. They are, in other words, the prefabricated scripts distributed throughout news industry superstructure, wrapped in the veneer of objectivity, and then blasted out to the general population under the banner of corporate media mastheads. Wow. The Lever's reporting the Washington gossip rags that are quite literally presented by a rogues gallery of corporate villains trying to buy politicians and kill the reconciliation bill, highlighted sponsorship by Chevron, ExxonMobil, HCA Healthcare, Facebook, or now Meta, Pharmaceutical Research and Manufacturers of America, Pharma, and Uber. The week after that report was published, by the way, Heated's Emily Atkin and Earther's Molly Taft examined recent fossil fuel industry sponsorships, Punchbowl, and climate-related newsletters from Axios and Politico, and guess what they found? Well, they found that, of course, tends to be on the pro-corporate side. Weird. Representatives for the media outlets did tell those journalists that newsletter content is independent from advertising. Atkin and Taft wrote that the responses appear to misunderstand the issue being raised. Quote, "No one claims big oil's ads influence the reporting of these news outlets. The issue is that news outlets are using their own quality reporting to sell advertisers on opportunities to spread misinformation on their platforms and make a lot of money from it. And are making a lot of money from it. look, the issue here for me is the corporate control over what we see and hear on the news. I do think that there is a bias. I do believe it is a not, it's not pro-Democrat, it's not pro-Republican bias, right? It's pro-corporate. And look, we know that it's pro-corporate, and we know that there are shows and there are, news programs and television stations. Again, all this corporate media. I mean, you look in MSNBC, for example. They're always airing ads about how awesome natural gas is. Oh, natural gas, clean fuel, great fuel, best fuel. Oh, natural gas, making everything great, wonderful. And you wonder why they would, squashed, because I remember Chris Hayes doing a very large report about climate change and getting it squashed by MSNBC. That's an example of how it does absolutely bias in favor of corporate advertisers. Pharmaceutical ads are pretty much the same thing. You really ever talk about on mainstream news how the real drug dealers in this country are big corporations? How it's really the fault of, Sackler family, pushing like opioids on people. Sorry, I can't say that word for some reason. Oxycontin onto people, getting them addicted, then going to harder drugs. You really see a lot of reporting on that. Maybe now after the fact, but you still have all of these. Do you see reports about how these companies like Pfizer have raised prices on a lot of these different drugs, including vaccines, life-saving vaccines, when all of this stuff should be free for every American, like in every other developed country? That's the effect that corporate advertising has. And by the way, so many people who watch these corporate news sources only specifically. Now, look, if you watch, like, for example, a lot of people will watch like a show on MSNBC, they'll watch CNN, they'll watch some YouTube channels from, Rational National, TYT, this show, Nina Turner, all these different, okay, if you have this different base of things that you get your information from, then you are in the know. But if you're watching MSNBC exclusively or CNN, you're not hearing these stories. You're not hearing about what's really going on with corporate America and how they are screwing us over every single day and controlling what you hear and you see in order to make profits. That's the reality of what's going on. And so when you have a situation, and we do have this situation, where these very companies that are obliterating the climate are now doing propaganda to not only muddy the waters, but also to pretend they care about, to help their PR. Well, no, that's just what they're doing, PR. So they can continue to do business as usual while claiming to, oh no, we've got clean technology. We've got all this stuff in the works, so don't you worry about that. No, it's all BS. And it also shows you why independent media, really independent media, not fake independent media, is so incredibly important.